views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking your time to attend this forum. Several weeks ago, the Northwest Bronx Indivisible decided that because of the pandemic and the limited opportunity the public would have to actually hear and meet the candidates, that we would hold a virtual forum. Our country and the need for wise political leadership at all levels of government has never been clearer. And the issues of the candidates we'll be talking about today are really issues that will determine the future of our country. In particular, the impact of systemic racism has played out in multiple ways over the last couple of months. First, obviously with the pandemic, which disproportionately impacted the African-American community and people of low income. And now, most recently, the history of racism in this country has been brought to the fore by the unnecessary killing of George Floyd, who was just the latest of a long list of African-American and minority citizens who suffered due to excessive police violence. We have a lot to talk about today. And we are honored, really honored, to have George Axelbank with us. Mr. Axelbank is a TV personality. He is the moderator of Bronx Talk, and he is the publisher of the only digital daily newsletter in the Bronx called This is the Bronx. With Mr. Axelbank's guidance and with the cooperation of all four candidates who are running, today, in the next hour and a half, we will sort through the complicated issues in this campaign. Thank you, Gary. Take it away.
Thank you very much. I'm sure my brother George appreciates the introduction. But nonetheless, good afternoon to friends and neighbors and many people in the Bronx. And when you think about this technology, it's worldwide, and we're very appreciative that people have decided to join us. As I usually say at the end of these things, but I'm going to say right at the top, this is, we've heard it at all the rallies, this is what democracy looks like. We have candidates who are running for office, and people have free minds and free opportunities to vote. And so we will give them the opportunity to do that on June 23rd in the Democratic primary. But today we want to make sure people are as informed as possible. And so it is my pleasure to welcome you, to thank my good friends from the Northwest Bronx Indivisible. As I did in all the previous programs, many of us have lost relatives during the pandemic. Many people were ill, have been ill, may still be ill. And I know all the candidates and all the participants agree with me when we send condolences where necessary, and of course get well soon where necessary as well. We talk about a lot of things, but we can never escape what's going on right outside our doors. So this afternoon, we have a very well organized program. The chat box at the bottom of your screen is for you. We'd rather not have comments like, oh, he's right, he's wrong, or anything like that. But if you could reserve it for questions that you have, then you could submit them. They are being monitored. And then somewhere along the way, they will be presented to me. And when we get to our question and answer period, we'll try and select many of them, and as many as we can, and have the candidates answer them. So this is for the 16th Congressional District, the Democratic primary. Will feature the incumbent is Elliot Engel. Good afternoon, sir. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
And there are challengers, 3 challengers. Mr. Christopher Fink. Thank you, Mr. Fink, for joining us. I think we need to unmute Mr. Fink there. We could probably unmute all the candidates at this point. Mr. Jamal Bowman, thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
And also Sammy Ravello is one of the other candidates and one of the other challengers as well. Sammy, nice to have you with us, sir.
Thank you for having me. A pleasure.
Great. The way this is going to work, and by prior agreement, we've already selected the order. We will be allowing each candidate a full 6 minutes to just make their presentation, tell you who they are, tell you what they're about. And they'll have 6 minutes to do that. We will offer them a 1-minute warning just to let them know that the time might be expiring. And then that'll be in the first round. And the second round will be 4 minutes long. And candidates can also use that to respond to something they heard, to rebut, or extend some of the other things that they said or wanted to add in. So that's how we'll occupy the first part of the program. Then after that, we will take audience questions, and the ones that you've submitted on the chat, those will be, as I said, passed along to me, and we'll go from there. So I guess we're ready to begin. We selected the order prior to the program. And let's see, I believe the first was Mr. Bowman, right? I put my paper down, I don't have it in front of me. So Mr. Bowman will be first. And we thank you very much for your time, and you have 6 minutes, sir.
Of course. Thank you, Gary. It's great to be here. Thank you, everyone who's joining us this afternoon. I just want to pick up where Daniel started. My first, occurrence or incidents of police brutality happened to me when I was 11 years old. I was in the 6th grade, and I was just horse playing with some friends, and the police approached us, handcuffed us, threw me against the wall, dragged my face across the ground, and then let me go without arrest, just because we were loud and boisterous kids. And when I went upstairs to tell my mother this story, we felt powerless to do anything about it. And I say that was my first incident because I've been a victim of police brutality and harassment throughout my entire life, even as an adult educator who was a grad school student, being taken out of my car, arrested, only to be let go. So this inflection point where we are in America's history regarding police brutality, regarding the COVID pandemic, we can't just focus on police brutality in terms of that's where the institutional racism lives. It exists throughout all of America's institutions, and it's part of our DNA. It's part of what gave birth to this nation. And it's one of the reasons why I became an educator in 1999. I started teaching in the South Bronx, started teaching brilliant, passionate students who came from one of the poorest zip codes in the country. But despite their poverty, they came in ready, excited, and willing to learn. And I noticed right then and there how unequal and inequitable our system is. And after working in education for 8 years and serving as a dean of students at the High School for Arts and Technology, where my job was to monitor metal detectors and capture students as they came into the school, and where I felt more like a corrections officer than an educator, we decided to do something about it. So I organized teachers, parents, and students to brainstorm ideas for a middle school rooted in social justice. We wrote the proposal in 2008. In 2009, we submitted it to the city. And in September 2009, the Cornerstone Academy for Social Action Middle School was born. And I want to highlight that Mayor Bloomberg was the mayor during this time. And he had a clear agenda to attack public schools, attack teachers' unions, and he wanted to open charter schools. We found a loophole within that context, which gave us the opportunity to open up public schools. So we opened up our public school in the Northeast Bronx right here in this district, and we did great work over the last 10 years. We operated as a community school. We were open 7 days a week, offering services like tutoring and music and arts and adult education classes to the entire extended community. And we've been recognized for our academic growth, as well as our focus on restorative justice and trauma-informed practices. But it wasn't enough, because our kids still had to go into communities that were neglected of resources and bad policy for our federal government. And in 2017, 2018, 34 children died within the K-12 school system, and 17 died via suicide. And right here in this district, in Co-op City, after being bullied in school, a 9th grader went to the top of a building in Co-op City and jumped off that building. And in New Rochelle, a girl was murdered during lunch by another girl. And what I continue to not see within our political spectrum was a real understanding and conversation and connecting the trauma our kids deal with to the poverty that they suffer and to the bad policy that comes from Washington. And when we started exploring a run for office, what we heard from the voters throughout the district were 3 things. Congressman Engel is not present, he is not engaged, and it's time for a change. So we got into the race in June 2019. We've been endorsed by over 50 organizations and individuals, grassroots organizations that have been doing great work. And we're at the point, very blessed and very lucky to be at the point where we're on the threshold of a huge victory in this election. So I look forward to this conversation, and I thank you all for your questions in advance.
I guess what's unfortunate about the new technology is normally we'd get applause, or at least polite applause after each candidate, but obviously we can't do that in this format. Nonetheless, number 2, I believe, was Congressman Elliot Engel. So Congressman Engel, you have 6 minutes.
Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining. It's always a pleasure to be able to exchange views. We've had several different debates, and I'm very, very delighted to be able to do this. But before, there's a lot happening in the world, and there's a lot happening in this country. Let's take a moment to remember George Floyd. George doesn't know it, but I believe he will be one of the most influential people in American history. Racism in this country is something that is a cancer and a curse on this country, and has to be rooted out every which way, because Black lives matter. Now, Mr. Bowman just spoke about his experience being a young Black student. I can't tell you that I had the same experience, because I didn't. And we may have differences in this election, but my heart goes out to him and every other person who was a victim of police brutality or any kind of brutality. We know the famous line from Martin Luther King from a famous speech, that he wants his children to be looked at by the contents of their character, not by the color of their skin. And I've always imparted that to my children and to everybody else's children, because you see, I too was a public school teacher before I got involved in politics. And then I became a full-time guidance counselor. And then I ran, and at age 30, I was elected to the New York State Assembly, served there for a number of years, and then came to Congress. There's one race. It's the human race. And we all have the same emotions, and we're all the same people. And in America, we're blessed because we have an abundance of things that are good, that make us feel good. But we also have an abundance of things that we need to root out. And one of them, of course, is systematic racism. So I have differences with Mr. Bowman, but I appreciate the fact that he gave us that example, because it's important for white people and for all people to understand what Black people have gone about for so many years. You know, I remember, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in the Bronx and grew up in public housing, NYCHA housing, in a city housing project. And there was a very integrated community. And I remember when I was a kid, I qualified because my parents didn't have much money. Mayor Lindsay was the mayor at the time. And he had an urban core, what he called it was called an urban core program, where kids who came from lower class income families, like mine, their kids were able to get a job paid for by the city of New York for the summer. And I remember when I had the job, my direct supervisor was an African-American woman. We became very friendly. She was probably about 10 years older than me. And we started to talk. And she started to talk to me about indignities that African-American people have to go through. She said to me, "You don't even think about it, but we think about it every day." And I remember one thing that stuck in my mind. She said, "You know, I want to get a taxi cab," and I wave, and the driver goes right by me and picks up the next person who was behind me. I never forgot that. And all my life, I have devoted for racial justice. That's why I get an A rating, that's the letter A, from the NAACP, because I've worked through my career to try to bring racial justice to this country. We have a long, long way to go. It's true that we have made some progress, but not enough. When I walked my district after the recent tragedy, I saw an outpouring of young people, Black and white and Latino and all kinds of people getting together. My kids went out, other people's kids. This is what we have to do. We are not doing a good enough job. We're failing. And so I want to say that there is nothing more important than bringing this.
Sorry, Mr. Engel, 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. Bringing this country together and talking about experiences that people have had. Because, you know, I have a colleague named John Lewis, who was a famous civil rights activist in Alabama and was beaten up on that Edmund Pettus Bridge. And he took me down there. We're very friendly. We went down there. He's endorsed me for re-election. And he is an icon of the civil rights movement. And he said, "We may have come here on different ships, but now we're all in the same boat together." That's true. We're in the same boat together. And we have to be respectful of each other. And white America has got to listen to Black America and what they've said. We can learn much, and never again should we go through what we've been going through. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Congressman Engel. And up number 3 today is Mr. Ravello. Sammy Ravello, you have 6 minutes, sir.
Thank you. I just want to say real quick, as a Black Latino man, I want to thank Congressman Engel and Chris Fink. I know they reached out to me with everything that's happening and offered their support. I appreciate that, Congressman. I know that your heart is in the right place. We're here because of our differences, but I know that you are on the right side of the issue. So I appreciate that. First, let me start by, holding in a moment of silence the family of George Floyd. We want to hold them in our prayers. Hi, I am Sammy Ravello. I am a Latino immigrant. I'm a war veteran. I'm a retired police officer that spent 26 years working and protecting the communities in the Bronx. Decided to run for office because of the division that exists in our politics and the decisions that are made to actively exclude those who do not fit the narrative. I'm one of those people. I have been in combat during wartime. I have been a first responder during the worst attack on U.S. soil. I'm a public servant my whole life, working in the most needed parts of the Bronx. I know our neighborhood. I know how they are affected by the policies that are implemented by the people in Washington and City Hall. Our current political system is broken. They want us to play ball, follow established rules and protocol in the system. But this is where the system has gotten us. It is time to bring new leadership to our district, someone who understands the needs of the community. And that person is me. And I will fight for education, housing, and jobs. For education, I want to make sure that our district gets their fair share of money when it comes to the state. And there is a progressive way of distributing the money. The schools with the most need, they should get more funding. With housing, I want to increase federal subsidies for affordable new housing. I want to give a tax break to renters who spend more than 30% on their income. And in jobs, we have lost a lot of jobs due to the pandemic. 38 million jobs have been lost these last 4 months. As we start opening the economy, I want to fight for an infrastructure bill that is going to put millions of people working, rebuilding our roads, bridges, and tunnels here in the district. We have a depleted water system that needs to be upgraded. Yo soy Sammy Ravelo, soy un inmigrante, veterano de guerra, retirado y que trabajó por 26 años con la comunidad. Decidí a correr porque nosotros los latinos estamos excluidos en la narrativa de las elecciones. Es tiempo de elegir nuevos líderes que entiendan las necesidades de nuestra comunidad y por luchar por una educación, vivienda y trabajos. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ravello. Just a reminder of folks, the chat function is available to you so that you can put in questions if you have any questions for the candidates. We'd rather you not use it to like say, oh, that was good, that was not good, you know, those kinds of comments. You know, it's valid, but we do want to reserve that space so that we can focus on questions that people have. Because after we go through these 2 rounds, we will be able to answer some of these questions and address them to candidates. Mr. Fink, then it's to you, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you for having me on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. I want to also thank the 3 gentlemen that spoke before me. They spoke very passionately about issues that are incredibly important to our district and our nation, and I think we'll get to more of those as we get into the questions. But I'm running for office because there's a lot of issues that we need leadership on. First, we have to address the crumbling infrastructure in our district. Second, we have to fix the climate crisis so our children and our grandchildren have a planet they can live on. Third, and it's been exacerbated over the last couple of weeks, we have to finally acknowledge the systemic racism that exists in our country. And as the people before me pointed out correctly, this is an issue that's not a Black issue, it's not a Latino issue, it's not a white issue, it's everybody's issue. But finally, I have a plan to get us out of this pandemic, get us back to work and some level of normalcy. I've lived in this district for 28 years. I'm a product of the New York State school system from kindergarten through law school, and I'm proud to say my kids went through the whole system of public education as well. When I was growing up, my father was a lineman at Con Edison for 37 years, keeping the lights on in the Bronx and providing these essential services in our district. And so when I finished law school, I started working for state and local governments all over our country. And these are governments who were raising money to build schools, to build hospitals, to build roads and bridges and water and wastewater facilities, as well as generating plants. And I saw how important these services were. Today, we're going to talk about a lot of different issues. There's international issues, national issues, and local issues. And my focus as your congressman will be the focus on the 2 other ones, the local issues and the national issues. We've all seen flooding on the Bronx River Parkway and the Hutchinson River Parkway when cars get stalled for hours because they were misbuilt, and it pollutes our whole environment. Can't keep having that happen. Schools are collapsing in the Bronx and Mount Vernon while our kids go to school there. And there's been a study that says in the next 20 years, over 25% of the bridges in this country will fail. I've advised over 700 governments across the United States on building and maintaining their infrastructure. And it's right now, in our district, the time is right now to fix all of these things. I know what works and what doesn't work. I know how to get things done, how to leverage federal money and work with all levels of government to get us back to work. And this will provide jobs. My whole program talks about providing jobs that are not only going to help the people who are out of work, but they can help the people in our district as well. The second issue I talked about is climate change. The climate crisis is one of the most important issues in our world today and affects everything. For the last 17 years, I've run the Municipal Energy Group at Bank of America, and I've been on the firm's Environmental Impact Task Force. I believe in the goals of the Green New Deal, as do all the other gentlemen on this panel. The difference is I have the experience and a plan to actually make it happen. If you remember, the Green New Deal bill that was introduced lost 57-0 in the Senate. And that's because we just didn't have people who were pushing it who had any experience whatsoever. I have the experience and a plan that'll combine regulatory changes, tax and economic incentives to get us there. I've worked on over 24 billion of renewable energy projects in the last 10 years alone, so I know how to get us to a climate neutral grid. The last thing I want to talk about is just my plan. If you look at my website, I have this See Forward plan. SEE stands for social, environmental, and economic. It's a plan to lead us out of this pandemic because clearly as a country and with the Trump administration, we had no plan going in. And that's why it's been so devastating. The social part of my plan will be to create jobs and job training for people in the hospital industry, to test and to track people who have pandemics, because this is not our last pandemic that we're going to see in our country. My economic plan is going to get displaced workers back to work, building infrastructure and renewable energy. And we can do this by changing the tax code to incentivize people to do it. On the environmental side, we need to take advantage of what's happened in the last 2 months. You know, in the last 2 months, pollution is down in New York City by 25%. So we have to keep pushing. And as I said, I know how to do it. I've done it all over the country. We can do it here. The last issue, obviously,
1 minute, sir,
that everyone's addressed is the systemic racism in our country. This is not a new issue. And as Congressman Engel pointed out, this is not an issue just for the Black. I have 5 children. 4 are white and 1 is Black. And the fact that I have to have a different conversation with my African American son than I have with the other kids to warn them about the problems we have in this country, and as a parent to make sure that he's protected the same way the rest are. This is something that I want to eliminate in our country forever. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Fink. So what we do now is we'll go around again. Each candidate heard something and maybe they want to talk about that, or they may want to extend their own statement. And again, a reminder to our many participants, if you have questions, please submit them. Now is a good time to do that because we will be doing a question answer after we go around with each candidate to do their 4-minute response. And you do that on the chat function. So we'll just keep going around as we did before. So Mr. Bowman, I guess you get the first count here. Go right ahead, sir.
Thank you so much. You know, we all mentioned the systemic racism in this country, and rightly so. But we have to talk about the systemic racism right here in our district. We have a district that is economically and racially unequal and divided. And if we were a nation, we would have the 8th worst economic inequality than any nation in the world. If you go to parts of the district like Scarsdale and Riverdale, you see some real estate that has some of the highest prices and highest value in the country. But we also have the highest number of WIC recipients than any congressional district in the country. You know, and Congressman Engel mentioned that he lived in public housing, and he mentioned how it was integrated. And he mentions how, you know, he didn't mention how it was fully subsidized then. I also lived in public housing, and I lived in public housing during a time where it began to be neglected by our federal government. Over the last 30 years, you know, public housing has been disinvested in. And over the last 10 years, we haven't received a dime from the federal government. If you live in the Bronx, you are 3 times more likely to die of asthma than anywhere else in the country. When you look at the cases of COVID throughout our district, particularly in Yonkers, Mount Vernon, and the North Bronx, you see a disproportionate number of African Americans and Latinos being infected with COVID and dying from COVID because of the lack of access to healthcare and because of the, you know, exposure to poor air quality and suffering disproportionately from upper respiratory illness. Our schools are underfunded. We don't have jobs and job training programs at the level that we need them. So there's a lot of work to do and a lot of work to be done. And when I highlight the fact that, you know, I opened a public school, it was, the school did not exist. We came together as a community to open up the school. We realized that the school needed mental health supports and healthcare. So we partnered with Montefiore Medical Center, who is now building a healthcare attachment to the school. So working in collaboration and coalition with community-based organizations, we built a school, we're building a healthcare facility, and we changed education policy across the state. And finally, I would say this: our platform has been rooted in racial and economic justice from the very beginning, prior to the pandemic and prior to the murder of George Floyd. That we will always be rooted in that throughout the campaign, and we will be rooted in that once we get to Congress.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bowman. Mr. Engel, then you get the next chance, sir.
Well, thank you very much. Congress works in a way where if you have been there a while, you have more clout and you can produce more things for the district. I'm the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. I was one of the 3 or 4 chairmen during impeachment. I'm part of Speaker Nancy Pelosi's kitchen cabinet. By the way, she's endorsed me for re-election. And I was very effective in getting money for our district. I procured $5 billion in funding for New York hospitals, which is 5 times more than any other state in the CARES Act. I procured 100,000 COVID-19 antibody tests for New York when nobody can get them in at the very beginning. I got $5 billion in additional education funds for New York in the HEROES Act, and $76 million for community health centers in New York, which is so important to places like Mount Vernon, New Rochelle. Got rid of this SALT, terrible, where people have to pay more for their house. It's taken local taxes. Was able to eliminate that. And I have 100% pro-choice voting record, excuse me. So, sorry. I have 100% pro-choice voting record, which I'm very, very proud of. As Foreign Affairs Committee, as chairman, we helped lead the charge on the impeachment of Donald Trump. I was one of the few people that was working with Speaker Pelosi on the impeachment. I worked with Ro Khanna to help end U.S. involvement with the conflict in Yemen. I ushered in the only climate change bill to ever pass the House, H.R. 9, the Climate Action Now Act, which would put the U.S. back in the Paris Accords. We got to get rid of Donald Trump. I'm sure we all agree on that. All 4 of us do that. Because he's the one that's been really holding us back and doing and saying horrible things. And by the way, in all the racial trouble we've had, he's fanned the fires and made it worse instead of the president trying to make things better. I'm an original co-sponsor of the Green New Deal. I'm a member of the House Gun Violence Protection Task Force. I have a lifetime rating of F from the NRA and a lifetime rating of A from the NAACP. And I'm endorsed by many unions, 1199, CWA, 32BJ, NYSIT, the Teachers Union, Randy Weingarten, DC 37, NARAL, Planned Parenthood Action Fund, End Citizens United, Brady, Sierra Club, League of Conservation Voters, Congressional Black Caucus has endorsed me. And the list goes on and on. That's because of the work that I've done and the effectiveness that I've been in terms of my role in Congress. Look, we have a lot of talent in this country. We have a lot of talent of the four of us running for office. Every one of us running is talented. And I hope that we can continue to work together to make America better. America is the home that we love. America is the home that we want to help. We realize it's not perfect. We realize that it needs help, but it is the best place. And it is the place where people like the four of us and many, many others can really help make it better. Now, I have 3 district offices in my district. We've helped thousands and thousands of constituents. My code is no problem is too big or too small. And we've helped many, many people through the years. I'm endorsed by Barbara Lee, who was the only woman African-American member, who was the only person who had the sense to vote against war, because people know that I take these things seriously and I work very, very hard on them. So I have this saying, it's a 2-year term and I have a 2-year contract. And when the contract is over, I ask the people to renew my contract for another 2 years. They've done it. They've done it 16 times.
Congressman, I think your time is just about up here, sir.
Because you're lazy and you're not around. You get it renewed 16 times because you've done your job, you've been effective, people like you, and they vote for you.
Thank you very much. We now move to Mr. Ravello. Sammy Ravello, sir, thank you. Take it away.
Thank you. I am the only veteran out of this group. I am also a survivor, first responder in the attacks of 9/11. I actually got there before the second plane hit. Mr. Bowman is walking around already declaring victory because he associated himself with one of the most divisive groups in the Democratic Party, which is shameful. You know, we still have 14 days left in this, 15 days left, whatever we have left in this campaign. And I believe I just heard him declare victory. You know, the voters have to speak, but you know, he talks about being going to Washington and being an inclusive representative in Washington, yet, you know, I haven't heard him say anything when the only Afro-Latino is excluded from the debate on New York 1 on Tuesday. You know, you're perfectly fine with that, you know, that the voice of the only Latino in this race is excluded. So, you know, my thing is that, you know, you're an inclusive and you're a fighter for justice, but when it's convenient for you, you have run a very divisive race, and I would like to hear his take on it. Me personally, I have worked with the community my entire life. I was a special operations lieutenant that brought the domestic violence down when I worked in the 46th precinct. Very proud of that. A lot less women were assaulted, brought it down by 60%. One thing that I also very proud, when I retired, I volunteer in the United Community Center of Westchester, helping immigrants. We are close to being a third of the people in this district, and I believe our voices should be heard as well, and I'm here to do that as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That means it's to you, Mr. Christopher Fink. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. The 3 gentlemen who spoke before me are all good human beings. My friend Sammy served in our Navy and as a police officer. Tremendous. Jamal taught our children no higher calling. And Congressman Engel represented us for 32 years. they're good human beings. I think I am too. What I'm not is I'm not a politician. What I've learned over the last 6 months is that politicians can say anything they want, anything they want. Unfortunately, in the age of Trump, we now can fact check people. And as my friend Chris Cuomo would say, numbers don't lie. So let me talk about some of the things that the others have talked about. Congressman Engel constantly talks about the clout that he has because of longevity. Talks about all the bills he's authored. Well, last year, he introduced 43 bills into Congress. None of them became law. 0 for 43. And over a long career, less than 1 in 20 bills that he's introduced has become law. Numbers don't lie. That's not clout. He says he's a leader and he's Trump's biggest nightmare. And he took leadership position on impeachment. It's not true. He was the 112th person in Congress to weigh in on impeachment. 112th. This is New York. We're not the 112th person to weigh in on anything. We're leaders. And he also challenged us all to say that we back Joe Biden for president. I've backed Joe Biden the whole time. Congressman Engel did not back Joe Biden until every other person left the race. That's not leadership. I'm sorry. Jamal says he's an award-winning principal. Let's check, because numbers don't lie. The Board of Elections, or the Board of Education in New York City, said that in 2018, after he's been with the school for 10 years, that only 1 in 4 of his students met the statewide standards in math. 1 out of 4. In English, only 1 out of 3. The numbers don't lie. This is what it was. Jamal also bashes Mr. Engel for taking outside money and not putting the district's interests first. Again, the numbers here are even more staggering. Based on his disclosed contributions, only $21,000 have come from our district. $21,000 in his contributions. It's disclosed in the federal record. He's got $30,000 from Brooklyn alone. So 50% more comes from Brooklyn. He's accused Congressman Engel of having donors with deep pockets. And he does, there's no question. But this week,
1 minute, sir.
the Justice Democrats and AOC have pledged $500,000 to get him elected. $500,000. So I have a hypothetical that you don't have to answer. But let's say that some company wanted to come to our district, provide jobs for those people who were displaced by the pandemic. But AOC didn't like that company. Are you going to vote for our district and the jobs, or for the person who gave you $500,000 to get elected? We know the answer. So why do you elect me? Because again, numbers don't lie. My group has been #1 9 consecutive years in a row in financing and building infrastructure across this country. 9 years in a row. Numbers don't lie, and I have a plan on how to
You
get
got about 5 seconds, sir, to just wrap it up.
I owe no one outside our district. The two of you do. I don't. I will get this done for our district.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fink. I think it's appropriate, given what was just said. We'll give everybody 1 minute to just address those issues. I can almost read it in each of their faces, so we'll go around again, and then we'll begin with audience questions. But there are some significant things, and I think people deserve the opportunity to hear responses. So, Mr. Bowman, did you want to add 1 minute to what you just heard?
Sure. We haven't taken a dime of corporate PAC money. We haven't taken a dime of super PAC money. We're completely funded by small dollar contributions. I believe our average is about $40. That's a fact. Congressman Engel, I've criticized him for being completely funded by corporate PACs and big donors. And I've criticized him for taking more money from weapons manufacturers than 144 Republicans in the House, and how he's funded by big pharma and big real estate companies. We don't take any corporate PAC money or any super PAC money at all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Engel. You got 1 minute, sir.
Well, Mr. Bowman is taking money. basically, with the new agreements he's agreed to with the Justice Democrats. But that's
There's
not
no
important.
agreement. It's we don't talk to them.
Well,
Like we're not. It's illegal to talk. I don't even know who's doing that. It's
Let's
not
let
us.
him finish.
Not our
this.
campaign.
Let's
well,
let him finish, sir.
it is your campaign because that's what you're doing. You're doing what virtually everybody else does while pointing the finger at me and other people. Let me just say this. We need people who are effective. I have been rated one of the 10 most effective Democratic lawmakers in Congress by the Center for Effective Lawmaking. You don't do that because people like your good looks. People like your good work. And I'm proud of my work. I'm proud of what I've done. I'm proud of being one of the chairmen in the Democratic caucus who was highly respected
5
by
seconds, sir.
across the country and has produced for New York. I'm happy with what I've done. And I ask the voters again to send me back to complete another term, to continue fighting for Dick Varda.
Mr. Ravello, you get 1 minute, sir. And Mr. Fink, I see you raising your hand. We'll get you.
Yes, I just want to say Jamal Bowman is absolutely 100% funded by super PACs. And he's going to be a puppet to the squad and whatever it is that they're calling themselves in Washington. He is not going into Congress now being his own man. That is, whoever says that or whoever believes that is 100% fooling themselves. He is going to be a puppet. And I'm telling you that right now, he's going to be a puppet in our district. I am the only one that has taken money with people from our district, and I'm going to be here. I've taken less money than everybody else. That's a true. And I still haven't heard anybody saying we want Sammy Ravello on the debate on New York 1. You cannot exclude the only Latino running in this race because a third of the population is Latino. Shame on you.
Okay, thank you very much. I will stand up for my network. We had no hesitation to go for anybody on the ballot on BronxNet is always invited, but it's somebody else's problem. I'm sorry, I couldn't help it. That was what I needed.
No, I thank you. I thank you.
It's okay. Mr. Fink, for you, 1 minute, and then we're going to bring in audience questions. Thank you.
Well, 2 things. One, Sammy, just for the record, I called you specifically to tell you about the debate so you could be on. So
no, you did. What you did, and so did Congressman Engel. Sorry to interrupt. I'm talking about Jamal Bowman. He says he's for justice, yet he's kept quiet because he wants a one-on-one debate and wants to exclude everybody else. So I apologize, Chris, if you thought I was mentioning you.
Well, Mr. Bowman really has made this whole thing about money. He challenged Mr. Engel to a debate and wanted to keep all of us out because he raised the most money. But you know what? Let's do it based on who raised the most money within our district. Your filings with the FEC said you've raised $21,000 in the district. You're going to be beholden to everyone outside the district, the same way you're saying Congressman Engel does. It's ridiculous. And you're saying that you don't talk to the Justice Democrats. Do what you've told him to do. Tell them you don't want the commercials on TV every night. You don't want their endorsement because you don't want to be their puppet. You're not willing to do that. Tell them to stop and just do this race straight up and tell them that you don't want to be their puppet. You don't want to be beholden to people outside this district. You're not willing to do that, and we all know that.
All right, thank you very much. Gentlemen, we have audience questions, and I'm going to go through them. I think what we'll do, we didn't really establish this, but I think it would be fair. We'll go in reverse order. We'll go 4 to 1, and then we'll go 3. We'll just do it. And because I'm sure everybody's going to want to weigh in on as many as they can. The first question came from Ron Wegsman, and he says, regardless of the results of the election in November, the country will, and he said the county, I'm not sure if he meant the country or the county, but
the district
will need healing. The district will need healing. What would you do as a member of Congress to heal the country? I think he meant country there, but either way. So Mr. Fink, you can have a minute to do that.
Well, there's a lot of issues, but I think that the issue that's first and foremost in everyone's mind right now is the systemic racism in our country. And I think there's a number of things that we need to do, and what I would do personally, and this is on my website again, but I would have taken immediate action. I would have started the trial of racist Derek Chauvin, that day. And panel of jury, get this out there, get it done with quickly, because we all know he's guilty. Take care of that right away. I would have arrested the other 3 officers immediately. If there's any question of probable cause, then you're not doing your job. They should have been in jail the next day. You can see on my website, I have some federal legislation that I will propose. Hate crime legislation that will prosecute officers who target people of color.
You only have 10 seconds.
The state, look to the federal. I put all jurisdictions on tighter restrictions on how they can use force. In the law, there's this standard of reasonable and necessary force. The force used was not reasonable.
I think we need to wrap that up, sir. I'm sorry. Mr. Ravello, you are next. You have 1 minute to talk about healing the district, the county, the country, whatever you like. All of us.
Well, I believe that my background gives a lot of credibility with as far as it comes with the injustices in the police department. You know, as a former police officer who spent 26 years, I am glad to say that I never received a civilian complaint. 26 years. I was involved in almost from 18 to 22,000 arrests. So I have the credibility to step in and speak on policing with credibility. I'm going to propose the power of the purse and give incentive to police departments that meet certain training goals throughout. And I want each police department in the nation to show us a little transparency in their hiring. Also, one last thing that I want, the police departments should look like the people that they police. I've always said it. I said it when I was a police officer. We should look like the people we police. So that's another thing that we would give in, federal incentive dollars for police departments that meet these goals.
Thank you very much, Mr. Engel. Healing the district, the county, the nation, the world, whatever you got.
Well, we have a lot of talent, and we can all begin to heal. First of all, the district and the nation. I appreciate Mr. Ravello and things that he's done. There's so much talent available. Look, one of the big problems that we have in this country, frankly, is Donald Trump. He's the president of the United States, and he takes us, in my opinion, all in the wrong direction. Instead of bringing people together, he divides us. Instead of trying to make America work, and the strength of America is that if there are people coming who are immigrants, you listen to Mr. Ravello's story. It's a heartwarming story. You can make a movie about it. I mean, there are so many people, Sammy, who have the same stories that you do. That this should be the strength of America, not the weakness of America. We should have friends and allies around the world because we have hyphenated Americans who have ties. Trump makes it seem like it's a negative. If we bring immigrants to our shore, somehow or other they're going to take our jobs and do all kinds of things. Absolutely not. The person who emigrates is the person who wants to better his or her life. And in bettering their life, they better America's life. And so we need a president who can bring us together, not drive us apart. We need a president who appreciates the
Thank you.
Walls and all kinds of things. Those are things that we have to fight against. And I know that the colleagues agree as well.
Mr. Bowman.
Yes, in terms of policy, at the federal level, we need to end qualified immunity. This doesn't allow civilians to sue police officers who violate their civil rights, which is one of the reasons why police continue to commit the heinous acts that they commit. We need independent investigations of police officers as well from the Department of Justice, the FBI, and others. The police cannot police themselves. And we need to defund and demilitarize the police department and reinvest those resources in mental health supports within our communities, as well as school psychologists, school counselors, and social workers for our children and families. This will establish trust and healing throughout the country, particularly in communities of color. And as a middle school principal, we hired extra guidance staff and extra social workers and partnered with Montefiore to bring in mental health supports to heal as a school throughout my 10 years.
Thank you very much, sir. Let's go to the next question. This question came from Jessica Haller. Can you please talk about your support of Israel, the only democracy in the Middle East? There are troubles with the leadership, and as Americans, we can relate, she says. Can you discuss your approach to Israel and a peaceful Middle East? So let's see, we did 4, 3, 2, 1. Now let's do 3, 2, 1, 4. So Mr. Ravello, you're first.
Israel is our friend. I've said this. This is something that I've always said. We cannot turn our back on the only democracy in the Middle East. It's, you know, and I want people to put their heads to this. Imagine you being an Israeli citizen and bombs are coming at you for no reason other than that you are Jewish, and that's dangerous. You know, we can't turn our backs. You know, obviously we need people down in the ground, and Netanyahu, I don't believe is a problem. And bringing sides together, I don't think there is trust and partnership there. There's not a partnership there. But if you look at all the other countries, Egypt, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia, they mistreat the Palestinians probably worse than the Israelis do. So we can't just accuse the Israelis. I know that they do their best, but just imagine they have a right to defend themselves, and you know, I'm going to continue to support that. I don't support what Netanyahu does and the human atrocities that are committed sometimes to the Palestinians. And we need a working partnership. We need to find somebody to work with the Palestinians because we also need to support them as well.
Thank you very much. So then it's Mr. Engel. You, sir?
Thank you. I am known as the strongest supporter of Israel in the entire United States Congress, and I'm proud of it. Israel and the United States share much in common: democracy, the rule of law, and other things as well. The United States and Israel are working together, sharing information, helping to keep each country strong. I want to see a two-state solution in the Middle East. I want to see a Palestinian Arab state and an Israeli Jewish state. But you can only get that if both sides recognize each other. Israel has on numerous occasions tried to work out a peace plan. We thought we were there twice, actually, only to have the Palestinians pull out at the very last minute. So the relationship between Israel and the United States is strong and it's bipartisan. And it's the kind of relationship that's a two-way street. Israel and the United States share strategic information, share intelligence, and do lots of things to help keep the Middle East safer.
Thank you very much, sir.
I especially support Israel. I think Israel is the closest ally to the United States, and I will never turn my back on it. And good friends can work together, even if they disagree.
Mr. Bowman, thank you.
Yes, I support Israel's right to exist. I support Israel's right to safety and security and self-determination, and I support a two-state solution. Netanyahu's behavior toward the Palestinian people, unfortunately, has come into question and should be critiqued because the continued annexation of Palestinian territory, as well as the detaining of Palestinian children, will threaten the long-term safety and security of Israel. So to ensure Israel's long-term safety and security, we have to have honest conversations about Netanyahu's behavior so that we could really rightly move toward a two-state solution that he continues to undermine, unfortunately.
Thank you very much. Mr. Fink, you are next. Make sure you unmute yourself there, sir.
Thank you, Gary. I really echo the comments of the three gentlemen before me. I think we all agree that a two-state solution for Israel is important. It is the only democracy in the Middle East, and we need them as an ally. I unfortunately don't agree with Congressman Engel's blinding support of Israel. I think it's almost like your children. You can love your children unconditionally, but in this case, I think that our aid to Israel should be limited based on human rights violations, that we should not give an unending amount of support for Israel if there are human rights violations. If Mr. Netanyahu abuses those privileges, I think he should be held to task. I think that it's same for both sides, from the Palestinian side as well. I think
15
that
seconds. Sir.
work through it, but both sides have to play by the same rules. I think Trump moving our embassy was a mistake. It's only causing more problems than it could help.
Thank you very much. For the next question, it comes from the Northwest Bronx Indivisible. And this says that, and I think it's pretty logical, people want to hear about this. Study after study show that deaths from coronavirus disproportionately fall on people of low income. Not surprisingly, the Bronx has the highest rate of fatalities from COVID in the 5 boroughs. Wealthy people enjoy a range of advantages that lead to better health outcomes, including better access to healthcare services. What federal policies would you support to ensure the people of low income that they have equal access to healthcare and will no longer disproportionately suffer from pandemics such as COVID? And so we'll go 2, 1, 4, and 3. Mr. Engel is first.
Well, the virus is something that obviously affects everybody. And the fact that it affects minorities more is, again, something that should give us good reason to understand that things are once again very, very unfair. When this virus broke out, the President of the United States waited 2 full months before he moved on it. Lives could have been saved in those 2 months. Many, many lives could have been saved. And now the administration is trying to blame China. I blame China too, but they're trying to totally blame China and make it as if they didn't do anything at all. Well, they did nothing at all in terms of the virus.
10 seconds, sir.
At the virus, when we knew about it and we knew it was coming to the United States, and they're doing nothing at all to show and to eradicate the fact that minority communities are once again being treated terribly. We need someone who's going to make sure that all Americans get help in fighting this virus, and that we put extra attention to minority communities because they're the ones bearing the brunt.
Mr. Bowman, 60 seconds, sir.
So the 2 policy initiatives that are most important at this moment are Medicare for All and the Green New Deal. We need to invest in healthcare the same way we invest in the military industrial complex and in Wall Street. We need to hire more nurses and make sure we are prepared for the next pandemic, because epidemiologists have told us that we are not prepared. So Medicare for All ensures that everyone is insured. It provides long-term care for our seniors, and to make sure the costs are zero when dealing with a pandemic or any illness. A Green New Deal deals with the issue of environmental justice so that Black and brown people aren't disproportionately impacted by upper respiratory illness and living in toxic zones. It also gets the tens of millions of people back to work who have lost their jobs during this pandemic.
15 seconds.
We're in the worst crisis since the Great Depression. And during that time, FDR enacted a New Deal, and we need the same kind of bold action right now with a Green New Deal to put people back to work and save lives.
Thank you very much. I believe, let's see, it's Mr. Fink is next. So, sir, go ahead.
I think Mr. Rebuttal is next.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I get that wrong? No, you are next, actually. He's fourth in this question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's 2, 1, 4, and 3.
Okay. Well, I apologize, Gary. So this issue is an issue that's near and dear to me. And as I spoke before, this environmental climate crisis that's been exacerbated by the Trump administration made it very clear that the effect of this pandemic was going to be worse on minority populations. The climate crisis has reduced the health benefits of people in urban areas and in minority areas to the point where their systems are more compromised than those who don't live in those neighborhoods. So we have to come up with a plan, like my plan, that fixes this climate crisis and takes the benefits we've seen over the last 2 months
15 seconds, sir.
and takes them further. It creates jobs and makes our environment healthier for people, so the next pandemic comes, they will be prepared.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ravello, for you.
Yeah, I'm just going to be real quick. Obviously, I agree with Congressman Engel. Donald Trump was slow at the switch to warn us. And obviously, you know, education plays a big role in my community when it came to the pandemic and having the outcomes. You know, we need to start teaching our communities, and it starts with me. You know, so, you know, I'm not good at pointing the finger. It starts with me. We need to start teaching our community about health and how about taking care of themselves. Since we tend to live in a more denser community, the government should have been known that, you know, since we are lower income and we live in a denser community, that information should have been put out there by elected officials, no doubt about it. And that's why you saw the outcomes that happened. We were worse off because of the pandemic.
All right, thank you very much. Let's see. So the next question, I think we're going to go actually in order: 1, 2, 3, and 4. Did I get that right? I think so. And this, let's talk about economics and the healing of our business districts. Sally Nichols said, what economic and social programs have you created in the past that have relevance and to this district and to the situation that we're in right now?
Well, thank you, Sally, for that question. I was fortunate enough to open a school, opened a middle school in 2009. We served 260 students, 99% received free or reduced lunch, and we've operated that school effectively for 10.5 years. We worked with community-based organizations and small businesses to bring additional resources into the school, because as you know, our schools are underfunded. And those additional resources allowed us to build a state-of-the-art computer lab where our kids are learning computer programming beginning as young as 6th grade. We started a local farming program where we're growing organic vegetables in our school. We started a state-of-the-art theater program, music program, as well as we built a recording studio in our school as well. And as I mentioned earlier, in partnership with Montefiore Medical Center, we're building a healthcare attachment to the school. So thank God, you know, we've been able to work in collaboration with community-based organizations and bring something to the community that will be lasting for decades to come. But we didn't stop at the school. We worked with parents. We worked with parents, students, and families across the state to change education policy, bring additional funding to the school, and move in a more progressive direction for all kids throughout New York State.
Thank you very much. Congressman Engel, we'll go to you, sir.
I remember my dad, you know, I've lived in, excuse me, I've lived in this district since I was 12. I remember my dad telling me that during the Depression, the Great Depression as he called it, he went out and sold newspapers to support his family. And if you look at the history of what happened there, the economy really didn't pick up, and we didn't really get out of depression until jobs were created, infrastructure jobs, federal jobs. And little by little in the 30s, we were able to crawl out of the worst depression in American history. This depression rivals that, may even be worse. And one of the things I'm pushing for in Congress is getting together to make sure that we do have infrastructure, federal jobs created, put people to work,
10 seconds.
The crumbling highways and the crumbling bridges and all the things we complain about when we drive to work in the morning. They can be fixed, and at the same time, good, high-paying jobs, union jobs can be created. That's what I want to see. That's what I'm going to work for. And I think that will help the country.
Mr. Bowman.
No, not me. I think it's Chris.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I'm just
That's okay.
trying my best. Go ahead. That's for you then, Mr. Fink.
You mean me?
Mr. Ravello.
Okay. All right.
Somebody.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to measure the next questions. It's a little hard to look at the time, so I do apologize. Go ahead.
No problem, Gary. I'm proud to say I retired last July. It's gonna go on a year. But just before I retired, I started volunteering with the United Community Center of Westchester. You know, after seeing all these businesses go or places go out of business before the pandemic, as you drive down Central Avenue in Yonkers, and what I decided was I was going to hold a shop on explaining young Latino men and young African American men on how they can fix their credit and how to, you know, go around the system, how to navigate the Small Business Bureau, and get loans in order to open up businesses. I was successfully happy to know that 2 or 3 of the guys that I actually helped started just before the pandemic. One opened a flower shop, the other one opened up a driving school, and another person opened up a multi-services to help young Latinos in the community of New Rochelle. So obviously, I'm hoping to bring it at a bigger scale if elected to Congress.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fink.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols, for a great question. In my career, I've worked on over 163 billion of infrastructure projects all over the country. That's more than 50,000 new jobs, good jobs that have been created. And I keep talking in my plan about fixing the crumbling infrastructure, and now my competitors seem to be picking up on that. But my plan does that. It provides infrastructure and renewable energy projects, like I've done for my whole career we can do in our district. Speaking about our district, I'm proud of the fact that we could have hired people from outside this firm to run my campaign. Instead, we hired 28 local students who were displaced from their summer jobs and their summer internships. And we hired them to work on the campaign so that they can have something on their resume and get paid.
10 seconds.
So I've created jobs, and I have a plan to create jobs going forward.
Thank you very much. Now, we got everybody in that question, right? Okay. I'm going to bring up, it came up, it's been suggested by some of the questions, so I'll just formulate it myself, and then we'll do 4, 3, 2, 1 and go in that direction. It's just about the Green New Deal. It's come up. Some people have mentioned it. I want to focus on it. Is this what we need? Is this what America needs? Is this what the 16th Congressional District needs? We'll give everybody a chance to weigh in. Straight and simple. You like it, you don't like it, you want to reform it? Let's hear about it. Mr. Fink, you're first.
Gary, I like the goals of the Green New Deal. We need to get there because this is the #1 issue facing our country and the world. If we don't get there, these other issues don't work. And unlike the other 3, I have experience. This has been my whole career, working on renewable energy, reducing the climate crisis all over the country, creating wind, solar, biomass, and hydropower, and working with electric vehicle stations so we can get to a green new environment. Because if we don't get there, we're in trouble. So I believe in their goals, but they don't have the way to get there. We need a way. We need to incentivize people with tax incentives, economic incentives, move them from the oil and gas industry to the renewable energy industry. We can incentivize people to do the right thing, and I'm the only one with a plan to get us there. I think you're on mute, Gary.
I apologize. Gets complicated. Reminds me of my day in radio when you had to run your own board. Those are long gone. Mr. Ravello, go ahead. I'm so sorry.
Yes, Green New Deal. I know it sounds very, very beautiful. I know that a lot of candidates are using it. Obviously, the ideals of the Green New Deal are good, for sure. But they voted on it, and it wasn't binding. They voted on a resolution that wasn't binding, including AOC on this. So what I'd like to see is let's take portions of the Green New Deal and start implementing it immediately. You know, we can, let's invest in solar power, solar batteries. Let's smart grids. We need a national smart grid. let's talk about nuclear power, support the development of new nuclear technologies like thorium. There's zero emissions. So I understand that,
15 seconds.
the Green New Deal is a goal. I like it, but it doesn't really get us there. If we take it piece by piece and start implementing, I think we can do more, and we can actually put people to work immediately.
Thank you very much. Mr. Engel, the Green New Deal.
I was an original sponsor of the Green New Deal in the Congress. I was at the press conference when the bill was first announced and carried out. And I've been a supporter of it because it's important that we do these environmental things. Before also, we talked about Medicare for All. And I want to mention that I was also a sponsor of Medicare for All. I've been a sponsor for many, many years of it. So I agree that that's important. We need to protect our environment. We need to worry about climate change. Climate change is here. Climate change is real. Climate change is something that our young people worry about, and rightfully so. And we have got to do a better job in this country to make sure
15
that
seconds.
climate change. We must absolutely do that as well, because our children and grandchildren's lives depend on it. So I'm for all these bills. I'm going to help push all these bills. And I hope if we get the Republicans out and get a Democratic Senate and House and a Democratic president, we'll get it signed into law.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bowman?
Yes, I support the Green New Deal 100%. If you look at our nation's history, during our most difficult times, we made bold political action. We took bold political action. After the Civil War, there was the Industrial Revolution. After the Great Depression, we implemented a New Deal. And now we need a 21st century industrial revolution. And I believe the Green New Deal is that. We have to understand that we're having this conversation because a freshman congresswoman that represents the Bronx and Queens shifted the narrative and shifted the conversation throughout the country. So now every debate in every race is talking about a Green New Deal because she came with the bold vision. And my background as a school principal, I've had students suffer from severe asthma attacks where parents had to call EMS to come revive their children who lost consciousness. And as a result, these children were never able to regain their faculties because too much oxygen was lost to the brain. So again, as I mentioned earlier, you're 3 times more likely to die of asthma in the Bronx than anywhere else in the country. And when you look at Mount Vernon and Yonkers and parts of New Rochelle, you see a disproportionate number of people there, Black and Latino, with asthma. So as we deal with institutional racism, we need bold progressive action, and the Green New Deal represents that action.
Thank you very much. Mr. Fink, you were first on that one, right?
Can we do a rebuttal?
No, we're not going to. Unfortunately, we have other questions from the audience. I mean, if you want to use your time for that, you're welcome to do that. This question came from Marilyn Brown. Very interesting local question. Would you fight for policies supporting and promoting worker co-ops, unions, and labor power in general? And if so, can you specify what policies exist on that right now? So, Mr. Ravello, you're first.
Yes, I've always been pro-union. I was actually a union representative with the Sergeant's Malevolent Association when I was a sergeant at the time. So yes, I believe that, without our co-ops and unions, we will not have the rights that we have right now. And I'm talking all workers in general. Obviously, one of the policies that I'd like to implement, I would like to eliminate the right to work throughout the nation. I would like to make the whole entire country a pro-union country. So that's something that I would champion when I get elected.
Thank you very much. Mr. Engel?
My dad was a union welder. He was a member of the Ironworkers Union, became a member of their executive board. And so I grew up on unionism. We were a union household. And I believe in unions. Unions are important for the working person. Some people, like the President of the United States, would like to destroy unions, but unions are what makes work good for people. Now, we need to do everything we can to strengthen workers in this country. We need to do everything we can to empower them. I'm proud of the unions. I mentioned a bunch of them before that have endorsed me. 1199, CWA, 32BJ, NYSA, DC 37, NARAL. They're not a union, but they endorsed me anyway. And I can go on and on.
Okay,
We
15
need,
seconds, sir. We can't let you go on and on.
okay, I'll stop. Stop right now then.
Oh, okay. On that note, great. Thank you very much. Okay, unions, I guess to you, Mr. Bowman.
Well, excellent question. And it wasn't just about unions, it was about worker cooperatives, which I
Yes.
support 100%, and community land trusts, which I support 100%. I'm also the child of a mother who worked for the Postal Service. She was in a union. As an educator, I've been in a union my entire life, so definitely support unions. Our housing plan, which looks to invest $1 trillion over the next 10 years to build 12 million new social housing units, creating thousands of union jobs, will also allow the people that live in these social housing units to have part ownership of their home, part ownership of their land, and part ownership of the commercial real estate that's a part of that land. So it's something I support 100%, and it's important for us to spread this model throughout the country.
Okay, Mr. Fink, you have 60 seconds on this question. And then after that, we'll let you know we're going to do closing statements. So Mr. Fink, go right ahead.
Great, thank you, Gary. As I mentioned in the introduction, my father was a union lineman for Con Edison in the Bronx for 37 years. So I too am very supportive of unions. They see the value that they provided throughout the 19th and 20th century, and they're incredibly important. Hand in hand with that is I support increasing the minimum wage. My company, Bank of America, was one of the first to go to a $15 an hour minimum wage, and I think that's important. And I think finally, and this is something that's been exacerbated by the pandemic, we need wage equality in this country, especially for women workers. We've seen in the pandemic that women, as much as men, have stepped up in a big way. And I think going forward, there should never be wage inequality in our country. And I will fight for that going forward.
All right, thank you very much. We are right up near the end of our program this afternoon, so I want to thank each one of the candidates for joining us. We're going to give each 1 minute. Let's try to stick to that minute so we stick to our final deadline. And we'll go in order. Each will get 1 minute. And I will thank you in advance. This is, as I said at the top of the program, the absolute best of democracy. This is what democracy looks like. And I understand the candidates will be, I guess, on at 5 o'clock again with the League of Women Voters in Westchester. So good luck to all of them. We'll go in the same order, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So Mr. Bowman, the first is for you. 60 seconds.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. I've had the pleasure of serving my community for the last 20 years as a public school educator. I started as a teacher before becoming a guidance counselor, and for the last 10 years, I've been the founding middle school principal in the Bronx. And it was that experience that gave me an intimate understanding of the trials and tribulations that our children go through because of the bad policy that comes from Washington. Policies like the crime bill, policies like voting to repeal Glass-Steagall, and many other policies take resources out of our communities and leave them feeling occupied and oppressed. And our vision is about investing in our children and families, not just in our school system, but investing in universal childcare, investing in environmental justice, investing in jobs and job training program, making sure housing is a human right, and obviously investing in our healthcare system by hiring more nurses. There's a lot of work to do. I look forward to getting started.
Congressman Engel, you are next.
I've had the honor to represent this district for the past several years. I've been around for every fight we've had in the district. I want to say, Mr. Bowman, nobody knows you. Nobody knew you from anything you've done in the community. You haven't been around. When we have the night out against crime, when we have all kinds of things, you were never there. And so to come on now and sort of point a finger at some of us that have been there and have done the work, I think is really very unfair. I have 3 district offices. We've helped thousands and thousands of people through the years. My slogan is no problem is too big or too small. I've been there. I've been around. We need somebody who knows the district, not somebody who was taken by the Justice Dems who think they can sort of run the roost and do all kinds of things.
Seconds.
This is not a dictatorship. This is the democracy. We shouldn't have one person from high, even though she's a colleague of mine, think that she can anoint whoever is elected to Congress. That's not what democracy is all about. So I'm tried and true. I've been there. I've worked hard. I've done things for people. As I said to people, 2-year term, I ask for a renewal of my contract for another 2 years. Thank you for listening.
Mr. Ravello, you have 60 seconds, sir.
Yes, real quick, I want to thank everyone for participating. Chris Fink, Jamal Bowman, Congressman Engel. I hope he's the only one that has vowed to call New York One and have me on the debate. So I really thank you, Congressman. There's a clear choice in this election. You can continue with business as usual, or you can elect the politics of division like Jamal Bowman. Both of these approaches have our country paralyzed. Or you can elect a leader that will lead from the front with a vision of getting things done, and I hope to be that choice. Hay que tomar una decisión en estas elecciones. Puede continuar con los negocios como siempre, o puede ser elegir la política de división. Ambos enfoques tiene nuestro gobierno en Washington paralizado. Por favor, elíjame a mí. Yo soy Sammy Ravelo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, sir. The final word of our program will go, at least from the candidate's point of view, will go to Mr. Fink. Chris Fink, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming today. So I think Sammy's right. There's a clear choice here. And if you want someone who's going to put our district first, who's going to fix our infrastructure, who's going to repeal the salt tax cap, who's going to proactively address climate change and get us to a climate neutral grid, then you should vote for Chris Fink. Unlike the others, I have experience getting things done. And unlike the others, I have a plan on how to get it done: the social, the environmental, and the economic. So as we emerge from this crisis, we need a plan. We just can't be yelling and screaming about this is wrong, this is terrible. Let's have a plan to get through this. I'm not going to propose things that can't get done. We talk about proposing all this legislation. Let's get them done. I know how to get it done. I've seen what works all over this country.
10 seconds.
And I've seen what doesn't. I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and fight for the people in our district. Thank you very much for the time today.
Thank you very much, Jamal Bowman, Elliot Engel, Sammy Ravello, and Chris Fink. We thank you for your kind attention. Just so you know, on Bronx Talk this week, we will be doing the debate for the 79th Assembly District. That's an open seat in the Bronx, and that will be on Bronx Talk beginning Monday night at 9. And for the final comment, my good friend and neighbor, Carol Foresta. Thank you for joining us, Carol.
Okay, so I just want to thank all of y'all for coming out to hear the candidates speak. As the Washington Post says, democracy dies in darkness. It's really important to listen, to hear, and to learn what people have to say. And now it's up to all of us. We have choices to make, and we have research to do so we make the correct choice. So thank you all.